MouseHunt. Welcome to Feedback Friday. Today is June 12th, 2020. I'm Dave. How's everybody in the chat doing today? Quite a few people, quite a few hunters joining us. Hello, hello. Hello back to you, Eric. Dennis. Dennis says I'm here for Ronza. Lamb says hello. Hello back to you. Ichira says hello. Good morning to you as well, Salim. Good morning, good morning. Yes, it is morning here, or good afternoon if it's afternoon where you're watching, or good evening if it's the evening. Well, today is really going to be a Feedback Friday. I'm going to focus on feedback for sure. We are kind of all hands on deck. The whole team is busy working on the Floating Islands expansion. So with us all kind of busy working on that, there's still months of work to do though. So that has us trying to organize a few smaller events that are relatively turnkey. Pretty easy things for us to put together and launch. That includes Big Jaq Spice Shack, King's Giveaway, as well as a visit from maybe another airborne traveling merchant as well, potentially. So this week I wanted to go over kind of some of those events we're putting together. We reviewed comments from previous times those events ran. Whenever there's an event up and running, we typically keep recording down player comments, player feedback. We put that together in a little document, and then we attach it to a task that's scheduled for the next time we're going to run the event. And so it's a nice little reminder to come and review all that player feedback, make some adjustments. And so today on Feedback Friday, I want to go through that, review some of the proposed changes that we're looking at, kind of get player impressions and thoughts, that sort of thing. So we'll get to, where is it here? Big Jaq. We'll start off with Big Jaq. So I think the most prevalent feedback that we had was that the magic essence costs were a little too high last time Big Jaq came. And so with that in mind, we are removing the magic essence cost, or we're planning to anyway, unless there's sort of a major opposal to that between now and the time that the event launches. We decided as well to kind of adjust some other rates accordingly as well, keeping in mind that the magic essence cost is being removed. So just kind of looking to get initial impressions of Big Jaq. I think from when we reviewed feedback from last time she visited, it was a pretty well received event. A lot of players made use of, but again, like I said, kind of the main feedback that we had there was the magic essence exchange cost was a little too high. So we've removed it entirely. We adjusted a few other things. Mild spice costing 2 notch-ore, that's down quite a bit as well. That was kind of simply some players thought it cost a little bit too much notch-ore. So Big Jaq will be a good opportunity if you are sitting on a whole lot of notch-ore and you're not sure what to do with it, and you're interested in doing more hunting within Queso Canyon region. You can exchange it for mild leaves. And then if mild leaves aren't exactly your flavor, you can trade them up into medium, trade your medium up into hot, and finally your hot up into flaming. And I kind of outline the costs there as well of the medium costing 3 mild, the hot cost 3 medium, and the flaming cost 4 hot, which is a little different from last year. Hermione says, I kind of forgot what this event is about. That's a good point as well. So if you haven't, if you weren't around last time Big Jaq visited, she is a traveling merchant who shows up in Queso Canyon. And while she's there, the mice have some bonus loot drops throughout the whole region. You can find kegs of bland queso. So actually that's what is depicted right above me right there. That is, I think, the large keg. And you can collect those throughout the event, and some hunters like to wait till the end and open them all up at the same time. Other hunters kind of like to open them up as they go, and they contain various amounts of bland queso. As well as while she is visiting, you can go to the general store, and she's kind of set up shop there as well, and you can exchange some things that you normally can't exchange, but you can only do it while Big Jaq is there. So that includes exchanging your notch-ore for mild, exchanging your mild for medium, medium for hot, hot for flaming. She also sells some blooming spice plants, and so they're little plants. You can pick them, and you get a variety of the spice leaves from there. There's a small, medium, and a large, and they cost bland queso as well as wild tonic to cause them to magically grow. Diamond asks, can we trade bland for anything? Just the blooming spice plants. So the spice plants, you can purchase those with bland queso as well as wild tonic. Sejin says, notch-ore, what to do with it? Nice one. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if there's nothing else you're interested in the general store, there's a variety of cash-out items. Or if you're really interested in sticking around in Queso Canyon, then Big Jaq's a good opportunity to cash out your notch-ore. Katrina says, yeah, I ran out of all these cheeses. So she's interesting as well. So the exchange rates there are a good opportunity if you have too much of something, or if you're looking at kind of a quantity of leaves that you have no interest in crafting into cheese and actually hunting with. It's a good opportunity to condense it down. You can almost compare it to the way wealth charms work. You can have wealth charms, but sometimes you have so many of them. You're like, I don't actually want to spend all the time to use up these charms, so you can upgrade the wealth charms into the higher tier versions and get more gold per hunt to use them up quicker. You'll end up with a smaller amount of overall resources than if you spent the time to hunt through it, but you also save a tremendous amount of time. So it's kind of a choice of up to you how you want to allocate your resources. Session says, could we get something to dump all of our spare cork bark into as well? Not sure, has a little use for those who map, but cork bark is just too much, way too much. Yeah, that's still kind of in the pipeline. No plans to tie that in with Big Jaq, but we are looking for just kind of a more permanent, because it's not quite the same as Big Jaq. It's a choice of you want to condense your leaves. Cashing out the cork, I think that would require something that isn't time sensitive or is kind of around all the time, that people can always make use of. Katrina says we need more wild tonic. You do get a trickle in the areas as well. Andy says, any new way to craft extreme Dragonbane charms in the near future? Nothing planned, no. Kind of at the bottom there, too, kind of unrelated to Big Jaq, so that kind of also spawned us to, or spurred us on to take a look at the Dragon Shard eggs, which were available during the spring egg hunt, and they were originally available when we launched Queso Canyon as a bit of a launch event. So we took a look at maybe using that as a reoccurring mini event, but we just felt kind of the theming wasn't quite right. So we ended up in the King's Arms / King's Cart. There'll be a permanent cash out for Dragon Shards, and those Dragon Shard eggs, they are now permanently spring egg hunt eggs. So once a year you'll be able to get those, and when you open them up they have some goodies inside, and every time you open one you also get a Dragon Shard. You'll be able to cash those out at the King's Arms. IFL asks, any preliminary date for Big Jaq? It'll be toward the end of the month. Brian says, will any other mini events be activated too? I remember in the past multiple mini events were activated at the same time. No plans right now. We're just kind of looking at Big Jaq and the King's giveaway, but not specifically an overlap. We're looking for some things that weren't a whole lot of effort for us to put together, so that we could stay focused on the floating islands as well. But there's still a lot of work left to do on that expansion, so we're looking for some little things for any hunters that are looking for a goal or two in the meantime in the coming months. But we didn't want to run the risk of, if we got kind of bite off more than we could chew, it might end up delaying our work on the floating islands, so we're choosing to prioritize that. The very best says, is large bloomin' still at 5 tonic and 10,000 bland K? So let me triple check, actually. I probably should have noted that down so I don't make an error. I'm actually going to open it up and play the current version here in case I'm out of date. Let's take a look. If it decides to load, there we go. Slowly loading. Maybe we can even, yep, cool. So the blooming spice plants had a little bit of an adjustment here. The small and the medium, I believe they still cost the same amount of wild tonic, 1 and 2, but the amount of bland queso that they cost has been reduced. And the large has had its bland queso quantity reduced as well, because I believe it did used to be 10,000, but the wild tonic cost increased. And so we kind of did a little bit of a deeper dive there, and we looked at the expected outcome of all the plants, or on average what you get when you pick it, and we kind of tried to make them a little bit more smooth of a choice, or make kind of their costs more in line with what you're going to get. When Big Jaq originally came, I believe we were putting together the Valor Rift, and we were looking for something that wasn't a whole lot of, or wouldn't have a whole lot of time to put out. in the meantime. So kind of a similar situation we're in now. So some of the calculations were a little bit, as you'd say, back of the envelope sort of stuff, or back of the napkin, however you want to phrase that. So we were able to take the time, put together a little bit more of a dedicated kind of spreadsheet, do a little bit of a closer breakdown, and try to get the costs more in line with one another. Surgeon says more flavor thing than anything else, but could we get one cork upon popping a Jaq keg? That was, I think that actually came up while we were looking at it, or maybe it was splintered wood, I forget. There's kind of a flavor thing, but it's kind of a neat idea. KDM says, hi Dave, hello back to you. Lamb asks, are we getting more events like this in more regions, like Hollow Heights or Rift areas? Nothing planned at the moment. Like I said at the start, we're kind of all hands on deck, really focused on working on the Floating Islands expansion. So with that in mind, we were looking for some events that were a little easier for us to put together, that didn't require a whole lot of new art assets that may kind of delay us or take our priority away from working on the Floating Islands. So we're kind of looking for some of the more turnkey events that we could put together. That's a kind of launching anything, even ones that are designed to be turnkey. There's always a little bit of overhead to go through. Like we always like to review player feedback from last time to try to make some improvements, as well as kind of putting together things like wall posts and kind of the promotional stuff like that go with pretty well any time we do a release. Yoshiro asks, any chance to downgrade our spice leaf? That's an interesting suggestion. Nothing planned with Jaq specifically. I mean, you could elaborate why you want to downgrade your leaves. Or maybe buying large with the same amount of small and medium kegs. Oh, for the kegs specifically. They're kind of, they all give you the same thing, so I don't think if we let you exchange the small for medium, like in the kegs I'm talking about, not the spice levels, I don't think it would make a whole lot of sense because they all give you the same thing already. So there's not really much a choice there. It comes down to kind of the frequency and the drop rates. There's a little bit of variety. So the more the intention there is when you find a large one, they're a little less common than the other ones. So it acts as kind of a nice little jackpot moment, or it creates some more kind of hills and valleys in terms of collecting those bonus loot drops, where every once in a while you might get back-to-back large crates, and it creates a little exciting moment, whereas then there's kind of those valleys where you're getting the smalls. And so if it was all exchange rate, then at that point it may as well just drop the same thing with kind of the exact expected outcome of a bland queso per hunt sort of thing. Just a share screen. Yep, that's I was just loading up kind of the test environment where we're staging the Big Jaq so we can see her in action. So it asks, is there a timeline set up for the progression of the Floating Islands? Not quite yet. So we're feeling pretty good. Kind of went through design proposal, prototype phase, went into more kind of refined design document. And then what I do using that document is I spec everything out and I plot it all along a timeline, try to identify all the various art assets that are going to go into the release, all the amount of dev work that has to go in. Where we're at right now, we just wrapped up what we call scaffolding. And so it's kind of setting up the preliminary development kind of code structure and planning. If I had to come up with a comparison, imagine you're hiring a contractor to build an extension or like renovate a room in your house. They'd have to come, they'd take some measurements, ask you some questions, maybe draw up a floor plan, kind of make a list of like what materials they're going to need to buy to come up with a rough budget of the project and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we've kind of completed. We've done all of our rough outlines in terms of code, and we know all the materials, we know we're going to need to build it, which gives us a better idea of how long it's going to take. That said, there's a little bit of uncertainty because the goal would be to get that ready before event season, but it looks a little bit tight there, so we'll have to wait a little bit longer. I think once the wireframing of the various interfaces come together for Floating Islands, we'll have a better idea of when that's going to come out. Just in case there's any little uncertainties with the interface, it's a rather ambitious heads-up display, I'd say, probably more ambitious than any other release. It's, most releases have a HUD built right in. I can think the Valor Rift HUD, that was a little ambitious, and there's some figuring out the steps and stuff, and kind of because the floors kept getting longer and longer, there's a little bit of stuff to figure out there. But there's a lot of different screens in the Floating Islands of kind of picking which island you want to visit. There's a farming phase, and then you visit the islands, and there's a little something to do depending which island you visit. As well as you are going to own your own dirigible that you're using to fly to the various islands and tour the sky, and you can upgrade your dirigible with various stuff or work on it with cosmetics and upgrade the ability to find new and cooler islands. So then there's a kind of a workshop interface where you're going to be able to customize your dirigible and upgrade it. Brian says, flick the switch on Zombie, Amazing, and Sunken City mini events. Miss the Sunken City one especially, unless it's not just a flick of a switch to turn on. Not quite. I mean, like I said, we like to review it, make sure if there was any kind of negative feedback that we had last time you were in it, like to use the opportunity to address that feedback. As well as anytime we do a release, there's kind of the boilerplate sort of marketing materials and promotional tasks that go hand in hand, and that eats up quite a bit of time as well. So we're trying to balance priorities a little bit of where we spend our time, and trying to prioritize the floating islands as much as we can to make sure that some sort of new adventure or expansion comes out this year is our goal. Maury asks, is Varmint Valley finished? And actually right before that, I see Vaughn says hi, I'll wave back at you. Maury says, is Varmint Valley finished? I seem to remember we had a choice between expanding Varmint Valley or the Queso Canyon area. I don't know if that rings a bell, but I mean, at least for the moment, Varmint Valley is kind of complete. We've kind of moved on to focus on higher level areas, kind of fleshed out some areas in the adventure book where there wasn't a whole lot to do. I remember Count stood out for a while, where players would reach Count and they'd kind of finish all the objectives you can do as a Count, but they hadn't leveled up yet, so it needed just a little bit more content put in there. But now I think for the foreseeable future, we really want to focus on adding more higher level areas now that we're pretty happy with how the adventure book is fleshed out in the mid-game. Freakschmidt says, woohoo, spreadsheets, it's maybe weird, but I enjoy hearing bits about how behind the scenes of the game works. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's in... when it comes to kind of timelines, not so much of a spreadsheet. We do a little bit of a hybrid approach between, maybe this get a little off topic of the game of kind of agile project management versus more traditional. And so what we find is in the development track, it's good to kind of set small goals and then kind of do a little retrospective, see where we're at, and make a change of plans for the following 2 weeks sort of thing. So a little bit more agile, a little bit more flexible. Whereas in the art track, because there's so many individual art assets that have to be coordinated and passed off from the artist to the copywriter to the implementer, that sort of thing, that would go a little bit more traditional and kind of a waterfall. And so we kind of itemize every single thing that needs to be illustrated, and then that's kind of nice because once it's all set up, the art team just slowly chips away and we can just see a progress bar filling. And it's great as well because we notice if we're getting behind schedule, we'll notice it right away. Whereas if you say, cool, we'll finish this 3 months from now, you tend not to notice that you're behind schedule until 2.5 months have gone by, sort of thing, right? So it's kind of nice. It helps us identify the times if we're running behind a little bit. We can either reduce scope or we can kind of look for things. Maybe there's artists from other teams that we can ask for a little bit of help to speed things up. Or actually right now too, we've kind of found Lauren referred a contract artist, and we're putting her to good use as well. She just finished one of her first mice, looks great, to kind of help make sure we can get through the floating islands as quickly as we can. Brandon asks, will there be a message 1 week before Ranza comes like last year? Yeah, I think there was, right, with the Chrome Bit event. And actually that might be a good piece of feedback specific to Ranza, was if you enjoyed the Chrome Bit reward structure. If I recall correctly, did they start dropping a week before she arrived? I'd have to kind of look over that again. And now that we kind of have the marketplace item freeze functionality, that makes it a little less awkward to do that. King's Giveaway, please, Dave. All right, thank you for the reminder. 20 minutes in, I'll switch over now to the King's Giveaway. So after Big Jaq, probably the following month, we'd be looking at putting together a King's Giveaway as another kind of small event. Doesn't require a whole lot of art assets. That's kind of the main bottleneck right now. If we want to make sure that we don't take up too much of the artist's time so that they can continue to illustrate things for the floating islands. It is, right now anyway, it's going to be the release with the second most mice released in a single area. I think Sunken City is still going to have the title of number one most mice released in a single release with 60, but the floating islands, I think it's close. I think it's like 57, 58. And who knows, if we have time, there's some mice we'd like to add, so we might try to break that, but no promises. So we were looking for other events that have minimal art scope, and one of them is the King's Giveaway. So we looked over the feedback from last time we did a King's Giveaway, and generally speaking, it seemed like the event was well received by players. The one thing that stood out was we named something bonus prize packs when they were actually kind of a small cash out that you get after you open up the main 10 mystery prize packs. We were thinking, well, what are you going to do with keys that keep dropping? Hey, you can cash them out for little tiny prizes that aren't as big as the mystery prize packs. But by calling them bonus, I think that gave the impression that they're bonus. They're above and beyond. They're better than the mystery packs. So we're changing the name to mini prize packs to hopefully better communicate that they are a mini version of the prize pack. It's similar items, but in a much reduced quantity. We also spoke about other alternatives, such as once you find 10 prize keys, then the prize mice stop dropping prize keys altogether, or the drop gets replaced with 10 King's credits instead. It was a little awkward because the prize mice already dropped King's credits, so that didn't quite feel like the greatest feedback. And again, because it's been a couple years, I think 2018 was the last time we ran a King's giveaway. So if you're not familiar with it, it is a time for a week or two where the encounter rate of prize mice gets increased. So that is the treasure, the high roller, the snooty, the mobster, and even to a degree the leprechaun all have their encounter rate increased. They drop King's credits, and then as they always do. But in addition, during a King's giveaway, they drop prize keys. And there are 10 mystery prize packs to open. So once you capture 10 prize mice, you can open up all the prize packs. The mystery prize packs have a kind of slightly more substantial rewards, kind of cool things to find in there. And then any additional keys you could find open up kind of smaller versions of those same packs. Freet says School of Sharks is very pricey for a one-digit difference in luck, unlike the other Hydro Trap. Buff it, please. Well, it's still one of the better traps in the game, one of the more popular ones as well. It just has so much raw power and luck as well, so it tends to get very popular, a lot of use during events as well. When your power type doesn't matter, Hydro tends to be the go-to. Actually, it'll be kind of handy when you get started in the floating islands as well, because the farming phase has no power type preferences whatsoever. Except Rift, you won't be able to use Rift power there, but everything else is wide open. So I think for most players, they'll probably reach for the School of Sharks. If not, if they have it, the Golem Guardian trap with a charged up skin. Will King's giveaway be before or after Jaq? It will be after Jaq. So Big Jaq is pretty well good to go. We've implemented all those balance changes based on player feedback that we went over a little bit earlier, so now we're just kind of looking for final impressions in Big Jaq. We'll be reading comments over the next week or two, and then Big Jaq will come out toward the end of June, and then this will probably be closer toward the end of July will be the King's giveaway. Accelerator asks, any ideas for the clockwork buff? There's been a few floating around, a few interesting suggestions on Discord and and we're kind of keeping a little bit of a list of those, and I think if we get to do treasure maps for Valor Rift, that might be a good opportunity to kind of tie all that up with a neat little ribbon. Is add a buff to the clockwork base, take care of Valor Rift treasure maps. Merton asks, how much gold will we need for Ronza? Only Ronza knows. Mandy says, I enjoyed Valor Rift HUD, especially when the floor is transparent when you lose your hunts. Yeah, that was a nice little, we often give little kudos to Andrew. So if you see kind of cool stuff like that in the browser version of the game, then you usually have Andrew, or on Discord as he's known by his moniker, Cardboard Shark. You usually have him to thank, and he kind of puts, we call it the Andrew juice, or Andrew Sparkle. And he tends to put a little bit of polish here and there. And that was actually a great idea. Kind of the feedback was very good of making it feel like, oh, time is running out as those steps start to decay. So I'm pretty sure that was Andrew's idea anyway. If it was not, I apologize to whichever teammate I am erroneously taking credit from. Lo asks, any hint on release date of Ronza? No, nothing to share yet. Ronza coming soon, nothing to share. Frank says, admit it, you guys roll a D12 and Ronza comes that month each year. Well, she has definitely turned into a bit of a summer event, kind of when the summer skies, at least summer Nani, I suppose. The skies are clean and the winds are low. SJ Colonel says, Varmint Valley, yeehaw. I think I've lost my place in the chat. Brian said, did someone say Varmint Valley? Brian does like Varmint Valley. Raymond says, how's Hickrab's financial position now in view of current events? Well, it still can maintain the game, so still doing well. Yoshira asks, any new items to exchange for Dragon Shard and King's Arms, maybe new skin charms or other items? No, just because I think we'd think about doing that if we were to expand it into more of a recurring mini event. But for now, it's all the same items that you found before. So that was Super and Extreme Dragonbane charms. I believe the Sparkling Nest is there as well. Let's go check that out, actually. To the King's Cart. Oh, this interface has needed a little bit of love as well. I got a little bit of a polish, but as more items get added, it gets a little harder to use. So here, yep, Super Dragonbane, Extreme Dragonbane, Super Queso Pump Charms are there as well. I don't know if the Sparkling Dragon Shard Nests are in there. I think they might be, but let's check here. Yes, they are. So the Sparkling Dragon Shard Nests as well, which those are pretty nice to find. Hot Leaf as well, Flaming Leaf as well. But that said, the Dragon Shards aren't exactly the most accessible item in terms of stockpiling them. Find the chat again. So asks Dave, are there plans to bring back some LE bases that would aid returning players? Not specifically the exact limited edition bases. Kind of for sure the ship has sailed on that. Limited edition means just that, and they'll never be back. But every once in a while we look at some of the more popular LE items and we do kind of in-game equivalents. So that kind of had positive feedback with the Hothouse base was LE. And then we brought out the Living base, I believe it's called, which has a similar effect. If anything, I know there's been a popular suggestion, maybe the Ultimate Iceberg base needs an in-game equivalent. But again, kind of we're all hands on deck on the floating islands, and so things like that would definitely be art asset related, so it'd be a little, unfortunately we just wouldn't have the art cycles to create new items. Julie asks, will the mini event for Sunken City return? I'll take that as feedback as it was a popular one. That one was pretty neat. I liked it too, finding all the sunken loot crates. That might be worthwhile looking at as well to see if that's a pretty turnkey event for us. KDM says, are prize mice catch rates standardized across power types? Are they easier to be caught with high power and luck traps like Hydro compared to Rift traps or Law traps? I believe they work like any other mice, but some of them have exceptionally high power. So just like your trap has power, the mouse has power as well, and then the odds of your power catching the mouse is your power divided by your power plus the mouse power. There's maybe a few other moving parts in the mix there as well, but kind of boiled down the simplified version is that. So something like the Mobster and the Leprechaun, they have a massive amount of power, way more than any trap setup in the game, so that makes them pretty hard to catch. All in One says, any idea when Ronzo's coming? Nope. The Real Brazilian asks, have you ever thought about making a dark mode theme for the website? It would be so nice. Indeed, yeah, it's been a popular suggestion as well. It's kind of something on the back burner, kind of in the pipeline, in the idea bank, if you will. Unfortunately, kind of the way the game is put together, being nearly 13 years old now, it wouldn't be the most straightforward undertaking, as opposed to if it was kind of built in a little bit more modern web technologies that didn't exist 13 years ago, but I'd say it's doable. It's just a matter of priorities, and so we've been kind of prioritizing new expansions over kind of doing a dark mode. Hermione asks, stop asking about Ronzo. Nazmi says, floating island progress. It's coming along. I gave a little bit of an update before. We've kind of completed what we call the code scaffolding, and the art team is busy rendering away the HUD assets and doing all the illustrations and icons, buttons, frames, that sort of thing to build up the interfaces. And it is quite the ambitious undertaking, but they're doing a great job. They've been sharing kind of their work in progress every once in a while. That's one thing we've missed of working at the offices. Obviously, we're all working remotely now, and we miss at the office. You're walking by and you kind of see on somebody's screen they're working on something cool, or it's just more natural. Somebody might kind of turn their laptop or their tablet and go like, hey, what do you think of this? But they've been doing a good job of sharing kind of work in progress, and it's just it's great motivation for everyone as well to kind of see things coming together like that. Richard asks, can we get Dragon Shards still? So going forward, they are just going to be something that comes out with the Spring Egg Hunt. So the Dragon Shard eggs are now a Spring Egg Hunt egg only. I said a little earlier that we looked at kind of converting the Dragon Shard mini event into something kind of turnkey that we could activate every once in a while, but just thematically it kind of felt a little bit awkward. So we kind of decided, you know what, just let's simplify it. It'll be a spring egg hunt egg. Every time you crack one open, you get some loot. You also get a dragon shard, and then the king's cart is there to cash out once a year after the spring egg hunt. Your horn is ready, Dave. Thank you. I caught a camo fusion mouse. Speaking of the living base, I couldn't decide whether to use the living base or the prestige base, because I feel like prestige base and the living garden, or twisted garden for that matter, now I just don't miss mice anymore. But I have to see. I'd wonder if what would give me more petals and more essences per hunt as I replenish my supply of ultimate charms. Swift says, oof, I can only buy one Super Dragon Bane. Earphobic asks, any plans for Forgotten type? Well, the upcoming Floating Islands expansion will involve almost every single power type, with the exception being Rift. So, and the way it's kind of put together, it's very centric to being 8 unique power types. So, and Forgotten's one of them. So you'll definitely be able to put Forgotten traps to good use. Sarba asks, can we have a non-LE Arcane Best in slot? I think that would most likely come with the Floating Islands as well. Let me just double check here. As I mentioned earlier, spreadsheets. I'm going to check my Floating Island spreadsheet. I don't know if it would be every single power type, but there might be new best in power type traps aplenty with the Floating Islands. May come down to as well sort of how much time and how the reward structure comes together when we have a chance to play test it a little bit to kind of ascertain just how many different items that reward structure could support. I hadn't looked at this in a little bit to know which ones are most likely to get upgrades. I think Arcane is up there, though. Yeah, Physical, Tactical, Arcane, Shadow, Draconic. Draconic is probably the biggest maybe, I'd say. Hydro, Forgotten, and even Law. But still a ways to go for there, so a lot of kind of unknowns. Colin asks, would there be another use for excess fragments in Valor? Maybe Elixir Rain consumes fragments rather than secrets. Well, the fragments you can use to do Ultimate Umbra runs, and the Ultimate Umbra runs will give you cores of the Eclipse. Hopefully I'm not getting that backwards. And the cores you can cash out for the unstable Rift cores. I think that's what they're called. So kind of everything, the low-level resources all filter up into high-level resources, and then they finally have a cash out. And it's a decent way to get Champion's Fire as well. So if you ever felt like you had just way too many to use, I mean we could see if it became kind of a problem where you got them faster than you could even think about using them, but I would consider just doing some kind of mediocre Ultimate Umbra runs where you just activate Ultimate Umbra and maybe not even too many other augmentations, and that'll use up your fragments pretty quick, I think. Allison likes the lottery effect of the Desert Heater. That did make for a popular base as well. Lucky Coin event will be back? No. That was kind of unanimously not received well at all, and kind of lesson learned there was that trying to put any sort of gameplay mechanics and progression mechanics surrounding something that not everyone will achieve during the King's giveaway, such as capturing a mobster or a leprechaun, is just a recipe for frustration. Hindsight 2020 there. So the lucky coins are definitely gone forever, never coming back. Trevor says, what floor is your prestige base at? I had a pretty good run last time. What am I at? Floor 116. And I did use, I think, 9 of my ultimate charms. Of my many months in the living garden there. I was just close. I think the last one, I thought I was going to run out of hunts before I reached the next total eclipse, and I earned a few ultimate charms. I also definitely burned through many of the ultimate Rift lucky power charms that I collected during the Great Winter Hunt. I sent one golem I just kept sending to the Valor Rift to stockpile a whole lot of overpowered charms. Session says, will you buff rainbow maps? They didn't age well reward-wise, in my opinion. So that's good to jot down with the King's Reward as well. That is one of the more popular rewards from the King's Rewards. giveaway. I think I said King's Reward. That just rolls off the tongue now. Look at Rainbow Chest. Take a look at that. Brian says, my predictions for new best in game power type for Floating Islands: Law, Arcane, Tactical, and Forgotten. I don't think it would be Law, because I think that's on the lower end already, so it's got a ways to go before it ever reaches into the territory of 10,000 power, 30 luck. But we've been playtesting a little bit with different kind of setups. I think, yeah, physical, tactical, and physical, tactical are up there because they're already pretty powerful. Arcane, Shadow, as well. It would probably be the top four that would have, not taking power type into account, the most traps with the highest stats, anyway. Spigar says, "Can you accidentally show us the spreadsheet?" Thanks. Let me see here. There's actually not a whole lot to look at. Maybe this here. Oh, let's see how this looks. If I can figure out how to do it. Oh, Why doesn't it see? All right, I guess not. I don't know why the window capture doesn't see. Maybe because I didn't have it open when I added this to the stream. It doesn't see my spreadsheet window. Yeah. Suppose I could take a picture though. Yeah, not too much to look at. Basically, if I have kind of looking through all the mice, yeah, 57. Kind of preliminary catch rates and stuff like that. I think I'm way behind in the chat because I'm getting a blue arrow at the bottom that says you're scrolled way up. Oh, and now I'm at the bottom. Okay. William says, are there any more early mid-game areas that would be revamped after the Floating Islands? And do you think those earlier areas will connect more with the late game? For sure, that's kind of something always on our radar. We've been starting at the beginning of the game and working forward, adding new heads-up displays, kind of better feedback, better guidance. Definitely with the game being 12 years old now, it's evolved over time, and how its original conception was a lot simpler of a game than it has grown to become. And so it we could go through that with the benefit of hindsight now. That said, we're all hands on deck working on the Floating Island, so it's just been a tricky thing to try to find the time and the resources for someone to go through, add all those interfaces and overhaul there. But slowly but surely, we've been chipping away at it. Chester asks, already have beta testers for the game already? Yeah, every once in a while, we if we spot somebody that is particularly helpful, we have them either help give us preliminary feedback on stuff or help. Definitely recently too on the Discord server with some of the more kind of technical things. We've been doing a couple kind of semi-open betas, if you will, of some technical overhauls. It's just been beneficial to get as many eyes on something as we can. Sometimes players see something that we miss. Eileen likes the desert heater base now anywhere in the desert. Yeah, kind of adds a little bit of fun variety no matter where you're hunting. I think I ran out of flame shards. I probably have some more because every once in a while they show up as gift of the day, and that kind of replenishes a few, so they probably slowly trickling back up in my inventory. Brandon says, is the best arcane setup LE? I think at the moment it is, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look. It's in a book. Reading Rainbow. Bases and weapons. So, what do we got here? I will search for the word arcane. So the Infinite Winter Horizon Trap is limited edition, and it has 26 luck, 6,000 power, which you could argue is up there. The New Horizon Trap has 217 more power. Something tells me that came out in 2017, and it has 26 luck as well, and is limited edition. The Event Horizon trap right being below is not. That said, I forget what the max stats on the Golem Guardian trap, although for all intents and purposes that's LE as well. Alsenberg says, will there ever be a way to upconvert ancient charms? Yeah, I think hindsight, the supply and the demand of those are a little bit out of whack, and so one day we'll maybe need to take a closer look at them, but no plans in the immediate future. But there's probably, they come into the game, I think, faster than something that should be tradable, so maybe it wasn't a great idea to make those tradable in the marketplace. I'm once again behind on the chat here. What we got here? Will there be a possible fourth component on the trap setup? Nothing planned right now. In some ways, the aura have kind of became the fourth slot. Hermione says, speaking of lore, what happened to Plink Run's notes? Again, just unfortunately kind of something we never have time to revisit. Sabra asks, has the team considered moving from PHP to hack? No, that would be quite the undertaking. Eileen says, it's still so hard to believe so many of us have been playing the game for so long, love the game. But it's the devs and their interaction that makes it a game you can love. Glad to hear it. That's a nice sentiment for sure. We get a lot of it as well. I don't think that the game would be what it is without the interaction and continuous feedback that we have. It keeps us kind of motivated and enjoying playing the game. It helps keep us in kind of the same mindset of players going through the game. Certainly it's tough, right, after 12 years of working on the same project, of trying to make sure that you kind of keep multiple perspectives in mind, right? Like the kind of long gone are the sort of fresh eyes to know what is it like the first time you try to play the game, for example, which is, it's always kind of beneficial when someone new joins the team. We like to use their fresh eyes, get their feedback on those things, and I think that applies to things even after just first starting the game, just new areas, taking on new challenges. IFL says best arcane right now is the Golem, I think. Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure if the fully charged up arcane skin makes it the best arcane or not. That would have been a good trivia, perhaps. Brian says the top 3 arcane are LE, to be honest. Well, that should definitely be a priority in the floating islands to correct it. Hermione says yes, best arcane is Infinite Winter Horizon for me. Let me see if I can still understand that portion of the spreadsheet that I worked on 2 weeks ago. That's always a difficulty. I think with Big Jaq too, I opened up the Queso Canyon spreadsheet, and it's always it's kind of fun to see if I remember what my spreadsheet even means after I open it. Yeah, Hydro would be up there, or Arcane, sorry. Eileen says, OMG, I made that comment about the desert base like 10 minutes ago. I better just scroll down and get caught up here. It's hard. There's 196 of you right now, and what of me? Sturgeon says, maybe an oddly timed question, but why is Jessla's Flame and Fire birthday skin on the marketplace? It's LE and quite a few people have the skin without the weapon. I think that came up before as well. I wondered if there was a task to take a closer look at that. Marvin says, will there be ultimate regals? No, again, we're kind of looking to keep the art scope as small as possible. And just with any release, there's just a few little kind of promotional marketing assets that their team has to put together. So we're trying to keep everything else as low scope as possible so they could stay focused on working on the floating islands. Maria says, I've been playing this game for like 10 years, but I'm taking breaks in between, always come back to it. Great to hear. Catherine says, about the game being worth playing 12 years in for all the reasons. Yeah, there's never an end to goals to set for yourself, for sure. Scrib says, sorry I'm late. When is the King's giveaway? Most likely July, if all goes according to plan. Alex says, Golem is generally best of whichever power type is fully charged. So you'd have to dig out another spreadsheet. Let's see here. We got events. Seasonal events. Great Winter Hunt. And was that from 2018? I'm going to say 2018. 2017 was the first year we did golems, but I don't think the golem skins were out there. Let's see here. What do we got? Rewards. Yes. Oh, yeah, I remember this. Hydro skin, arcane skin, yep. And yeah, sure enough, I can't really fully understand my spreadsheet now. I have something called Golem Generator Trap Stats, and then in parentheses, Luck Focused version, and then Golem Generator Trap Stats Power Focused version. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I don't know which one got the kind of final green light to go out. I suspect it was this top one. If the physical, when fully charged, does it have 7,000 power and 32 luck? Golem is only good for arcane. Well, if I recall correctly, I think the physical one still has the highest luck of a trap at 32. Chester says, Jaq, end of June, so expect July, August. Yeah, we're just putting the finishing touches on Jaq, kind of getting the last player feedback and impressions before we kind of rubber stamp all of the adjustments that we were working on. So she should be ready to go at the end of the month. And typically, too, we kind of time releases with the end of the month for the most part, is kind of how things have worked out. King's Giveaway then would be the following month. Justin says, pretty certain my Golem was set to Arcane because of the only best in slot type with a tiny use case for Forgotten Golem, I think. DJ Taylor says, what is the average rank of the active player base? You know what? That's an interesting question. I don't have that off the top of my head. We have a dashboard with a whole lot of other stats. And actually today's trivia question is to kind of take a guess at it, stats. But that's actually something we've wanted to add to that dashboard for a while, is kind of a breakdown of hunters by title, kind of measure areas and adventures in terms of popularity, how many hunters have interacted with it, engagement, as well as kind of how many hunts per day do players take in that area. And so if I look at today, let's take a look at yesterday. Yesterday, the most popular area in the game was the Valor Rift, with 16.3% of players interacted with the Valor Rift, took a hunt in there, did something in the Valor Rift, and those players on average did 54.8 hunts each yesterday in the Valor Rift, which I think also makes it the most, what we say, engaging, the one where you do the most hunts. Bristlewood's Rift is in second place with 50.7 hunts per player yesterday. But yeah, we've wanted to add that for a while now. I've been kind of curious. Every once in a while, we kind of run some queries and check it out. But to kind of keep recording those results so you can graph it over time, it's kind of fun. Data can be fun to look at different graphs and charts and stuff like that. So it'd be kind of neat to see the number of hunts per day by title, even just the breakdown and percentage of what title everyone is in the game. Be able to check that without having to kind of go to your way to run a query. And where am I now? Ryan says, can you introduce a charm just for hunting Malak the Banished Mouse? Because most of my day trying for him, keeping liches wasting a lot of time. Well, that's what makes it a difficult mouse. So if it is a mouse that, if you're doing maps with Balak on there, or you are looking to earn a King's Crown, that's what makes it such a prestigious King's Crown. So add that as a favorite crown on your profile and wear it with a badge of honor. Senef says, any way to make Prestige Base a suggested option when switching setups on mobile. On desktop is fine since you can set 5 bases on top, but it's not a feature on mobile. Mobile does have, you can save entire setups. That's it, it's not the most used feature. It needs a little bit of love, I think. That's it, actually. That might be worth noting down. I wonder if kind of the special nature... write that down. The special nature of it, I wonder if the suggestion system thinks it has lower stats than it actually does, because it's not taking into account the buff that it's receiving from your best ultimate under run. So that's kind of something worth jotting down. A lot of breakdown of the golems happening in chat. Golem is 6,000 power. 15% power bonus, 20 luck. Horizons have just 26. So there you go. The golem will beat out those horizons at 28. And even again, kind of... let me close this. Actually, it's much too early to even get feedback on this. We haven't really play tested Arcane. Well, yeah, the kind of stats we were playing around with, it would definitely blow that out of the water. So it's pushing 40 at the moment. Yaron asks, will Floating Island have a physical trap better than the Chrome Monster bot? Too early to say for sure. There's still months of work left to go. We have been kind of fleshing out kind of if we did new best trap for every single power type, what could that look like? Sort of seeing what would the extreme end of it look like, and then that might help give us perspective on finding the middle ground there. So it's certainly a possibility. But much too soon to even kind of commit to that or even start getting feedback on potential directions with that. Disguised Toast asks, can we bring back the droids to be incorporated into trap design? Every once in a while. I know that's kind of always at the back of Jacob's mind. Every once in a while I think to draw a droid. Hermandy says, I'm also curious if we still have new players. Yes, actually, and kind of, again, a little anecdotal, but I've even noticed on the game subreddit, there's kind of a little bit more often posts than there used to be in terms of, hey, just started playing this game, or a similar nature, hey, coming back from a long break. But yeah, for sure. Let's check that out. Let's take a look at the last 7 days, if I can find it. So most of the new players are coming through the mobile app. 38% of them are on iOS, 35% on Android, 15% on Facebook, and 13% on MouseHuntGame.com. And what did we look at yesterday? Will this show up yesterday? No, it won't show up yesterday. Is that about 1,000 or so? Yeah, maybe about 1,000 or so last week. Jason says, I use presets a ton on mobile. Like if it had up to 25, I'd be glad. Yeah, that's definitely been in the idea bank as well. Kind of take a closer look at that, try to consolidate things between browser and mobile so they would sync up. Also, one shortcoming of the mobile implementation is it stores those setups locally. So if you delete the app and reinstall it, you lose your favorite setups. You don't lose the slots that you've unlocked. Those are kind of associated with your user account. But unless I'm mistaken, those setups, they're just kind of stored locally in a file. So when you delete the app, the file goes away. So it could use kind of a second pass. A lot of it's kind of putting out a little something that's kind of good enough but not maybe perfect, because that's a great opportunity to get feedback, see how many players are using it, see how many players are asking for more of the same, or want something a little bit different. Ritsky says, ultimate prestige base when? Probably not anytime soon. Brian says, pushing 40k power or 40 luck. We'll leave it to be a mystery. It might have been 40 luck. Alex says, do favorite setups override non-selected things? So if you have prestige and nothing else, will it just switch the base? Off the top of my head, I don't know. I think so. That would make sense, because if you don't have a weapon set, it's not like you can disarm your weapon or trap, if you want to call it that, that's sitting on top of the base. So I would assume it works that way, but I don't know for sure. Astral says, is it possible to display the arm charm stats in the charm selector instead of the big disarm button? Could move the disarm button under the charm icon instead. I might have to look at the game to visualize that. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. It's kind of hard to see the stats of that. What do we do for cheese? Yeah, I guess it's model after cheese. It's tricky too, because not everything has stats, and a lot of times, sometimes it's the description, but that's kind of an interesting note. Chester says, any ideas to make a charm bridging the gap of extreme luck versus ultimate luck, something similar to rainbow luck? I think originally the tiers of regular, super, and extreme were meant to be kind of a little bit more bread and butter accessible charms, and the ultimates are kind of above and beyond. When you have those armed and you use them up, it's going to be a while before you're able to replenish your supply of those. So that's kind of why that gap exists as a huge step in terms of how powerful they are being balanced with their scarcity. Astral says, sometimes we need to compare charm stats with one armed, and it is hard with the interface now. Yeah, that's fair enough. IFL says, lots of new players on Discord these days. Yeah, I've kind of noticed, again, a little anecdotal, but kind of seem a little bit more than than usual. Probably, I don't know if it's been a year yet, but we've been doing various different kind of advertising campaigns as well, where we can with varying levels of success depending where it is. Bruce says charms. Would it be possible to add a stack feature for charms? Stack charms so that while away from the game, when a charm is out, stack charm would fall into and replace it. Yeah, that's kind of interesting as well. I know there's been similar suggestions for cheese as well, or kind of the inverse of that, the ability to arm only a specific quantity of something. So if you have, you know, 1,000 glowing Gruyere cheese, can I just arm 25 pieces of it to take me to the end of a hallway? That's kind of been chilling out in the idea bank. That might be an interesting kind of related thing. Fritzoid says, please include trap setup on themes. Trap setup on themes. I don't know if I follow you. Alison Berg says, I have a friend who started playing again after 8 years. I'm helping him get bounty maps in Clawshot and trying to bronze my ringleaders while I'm at it. Great to hear. Hermandy says, when was the last time we used the crafting tab to actually craft stuff? Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of a case of evolved gameplay over the course of more than a decade. So I think Froma was the introduction of crafting, and kind of, again, as the years have gone by and the game's gotten bigger, there's a lot more interesting things to do than figure out a crafting recipe. Kind of similar of why travel costs went away at one point. Back 12 years ago, like the laboratory cost, I think it was like 12,000 gold or 20,000 gold, something a lot to go to the laboratory, because at the time there wasn't a whole lot to the game. So that was a major decision when you decide, okay, I'm ready to go to the laboratory. Okay, make sure I got all the cheese I'm gonna need, because once I'm there, and it's gonna cost me if I want to leave and come back. But as things like maps were added to the game and more varieties of areas and various events and stuff, it's actually fun to travel around the map. There's more interesting objectives to move around and travel than kind of that choice of, well, every time I travel it costs me something and I'm trying to manage my gold as a travel resource. Just wasn't as interesting as the more kind of broad stroke stuff like that. So again, kind of crafting falls into a similar category as well, where procuring the items, discovering them, stockpiling them, managing your resources of like item A and item B that you know you need to combine. I think over the years that's proven to be a much more compelling thing to manage than actually kind of going in the crafting interface and figuring out how to tinker things together. Senef says, just try to do that, and you can't leave empty slots on any setup component. All right, well, that's interesting. Like I said, there's no plans to revisit that right now, but it's kind of in the same boat as tournaments. We kind of know we would like to, and when we have the time to do so, it would be a worthwhile project. Sejin says, this is probably not a new suggestion, but is a pump level 11-12 getting added with Big Jaq's arrival? No. Originally, we did look at that as when Big Jaq showed up, you'd be able to collect some very unique looking little gears and cogs and then build an upgrade for your pump to pump it up to 11. But instead, we added bonus queso drops instead. It was just kind of a little easier to manage, didn't require updating the interface. Kind of that awkwardness too of people showing up, and then because Big Jaq's not around, you can't obtain this level 11 pump. Kind of felt a little awkward. Brian says dehydration base was the introduction to crafting. That or white cheddar. I think those are lower level items you craft. But again, I could be mistaken. But I think Froma is where crafting kind of came to be, because I can remember Jacob even sketching Plankrun's pages. Originally, that was their function, was to let you learn crafting recipes that otherwise would be hard to figure out on your own, or there would be no feedback in the game telling you how to put together these ingredients to make cheese. So you'd find this Plankrun page and it would have a recipe scribbled on it, or at least a hint, a clue, some sort of feedback to help you. But again, as the years have gone by, there's so much more interesting objectives and goals to set for yourself than trying to figure out how much of item A, B, and C you need to combine to craft something. So it kind of fell by the wayside. Frischmidt says, I've been using the marketplace to only arm a few glowing Gruyere, but super expensive sell order. Yeah, fair enough. There's kind of a neat little niche workaround for that. I know even like when I was going through the Valor, sometimes I would only craft so much cheese at a time, but every once in a while I'd kick myself if I crafted too much. Same in the lab, I would try to like craft a very specific batch at a time. But sometimes, you get glowing gruyere from other sources, and it kind of throws a wrench in your plan. Yoshiro asks, any info on Season 8 Relic Hunter? Estimates month, maybe. I think that's something we want to try to slot into November when we can. So it'll still be a ways away. On that note, we should go on to the trivia to wrap things up here. And this week is a little bit of a guessing game. In kind of context of the various stats we were just looking at, this week's trivia question is, in the last 2 weeks, only 2% of players have used this trap. What trap is it? I guess I'll make it a question, not a statement, by asking which trap is it. 48 is wrong. There is no 48 trap. The Dragon Slayer cannon is right. Brian coming right out of the bat with the correct guess. First guess was the correct guess, and it is indeed the Dragon Slayer cannon. And I'll put a reward link in the chat. Larry's got your back. And I'll put it up here as well in case you're watching this recorded, if I can figure out how to do such a thing. Text. Reward link. And I don't know why the default font size is 256. Seems a little large to me. There we go. Shrink that down. Yeah. Okay, now I made it way too small. Let's make that larger, shall we? Helvetica. Always a good choice. Can't go wrong with Helvetica. Ariel's a close second. Still not very big. Let's go a little larger. '96 maybe? 96 font. That's kind of nice. Alright. There you go. Good thing I'm wearing a dark colored shirt. So this will be my emblem for the day. Comic Sans, never. No, Comic Sans doesn't exist. There are very few applications for Comic Sans. It's for ironic use only. Moro says that few hunters. Now keep in mind, that isn't how many hunters own that trap, but it's how many have made use of it in the last 2 weeks. And seen as the Valor Rift and Bristlewoods Rift are the most popular areas at the moment, that kind of makes sense. Let's actually take a look here in the last 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks, the most popular area. No, just kidding. Slay the Geyser Dragon is the most popular adventure. What if we look at environments? Maybe I'm looking at adventures. Last 2 weeks. Sort by popularity. Yes, in terms of locations, the Valor Rift is the most popular at 16.4% of players were in there for the last 2 weeks. Bristlewoods Rift, then the Prickly Plains, then Queso River, Labyrinth, Feroma Rift, Fort Rocks, then Queso Geyser. But Prickly and Plains and the Queso River combined are quite popular, so kind of as a whole that adventure is getting a lot of use. But you'd only use your Draconic in Queso Geyser, and in the last 2 weeks, 5.1% of players have taken a hunt in Queso Geyser, as opposed to 16% in Valor Rift, 11% Bristlewoods Rift, 10.5% in the Prickly Plains, and 7.5% in Queso River. So not a whole lot of love, or not a whole lot of Draconic being used the last 2 weeks. Thanks for the rib, Larry. I tested it before the stream. The reward link should not be a rib. In fact, it is impossible for us to accidentally make a reward link that contains a rib. We removed it from the drop-down box, so Larry can't make said mistake. Brian says, remember Dave saying there's no Dragon Slayer cannon skin just because how few hunters use it. Drew one anyway on Feedback Friday. Yeah, if I do recall, it was kind of a gilded theme, so I'm wondering if that might be a good thing to hold on to for the next Relic Hunter season. Alex says, wait, have we figured the scribbles behind Dave means? Oh, yeah. I was doing some arithmetic yesterday with Param. And the other is a mock-up for Actually, nothing MouseHunt related. That's my weekend programming gig. I was doing a mock-up for something. Looks like, yeah. Said to do some cross multiplication. Yeah, for whatever reason, I can never do that in my head. I have to write it out every time to do kind of to cross multiplier. Very simple solve for x. I have to just write it out, otherwise I just make a mistake. Morrow asks, what is the emptiest place? That's always an interesting thing to look up as well. Let's take a look at the environments. The tournament hall had a massive boost in popularity, I'll say that. Okay, last 2 weeks. Sort by popularity. And in last place is Ronza's Traveling Shop, has had nobody in it. The Super Brie Factory has had nobody in it. The Vacant Lot has had nobody in it. But the first actual one that somebody could go to is the King's Arms. 0.3% of players took a hunt in the King's Arms, and those players did 12.3 hunts per day on average. Somebody was hunted in the King's Arms. The Bazaar is also right down there. Calm Clearing, Dracano, the Harbor, Training Grounds, Meditation Room. These are all under 1%. Town of Digby, Windmill, Toxic Spill, Pinnacle Chamber, and the Meadow, Narnia Rift. Those are all the ones that are 1% or less. Crystal Library is the first one with over 1% of players. There's a lot of areas. That's for sure. Swift says, I guess King's Arms. You were correct. Bristlewood's Rift, I'm part of it. Bionic and Meadow keeps people going there, though. The King's Stockade. Yeah, actually, it's not an actual location. It's just when somebody is banned, we just replace the name of their area, but they're still technically residing in that location where they started. Event locations don't count, says Herman. Yep. Do we have themes for skins now like the gilded ones? Not sure if I follow you. Chester says, with regards to stacking charms, can we add an option to use X quantity? That is in the idea bank, just kind of something that we haven't been able to prioritize. King's Arms for treasure maps. Yeah, fair enough, actually. That's probably, there might be a niche mouse there. One or two, that's the best place to go there. Sinif says 0.3% of players probably misclick on travel. I know we should wrap things up because I'm actually getting hungry here. I better take my lunch break and then get back at it. Have a meeting at 2 and one at 4 o'clock as well. So I should try to also achieve a few things in between those. One of those said things being increasing my blood sugar for the interest of productivity. So thanks for joining me, Hunters. I believe next week Jacob will join you. I would assume he'll probably be doing a little bit more Floating Islands art. I know he was working on the heads-up display last Friday, drawing some icons. They're looking rather juicy, as we call it, like little gummies. Something that always looks delicious, like you want to eat it. So thanks for joining me. Jacob, we'll see you next week. And until then, happy hunting, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Such a beautiful you, you're the such a beautiful you. I am caught up in the crazy game. Look at me, barely at level 3. I just know I'll never be the same. All the mice, all the terrible mice. If I had my way, I'd catch a ton. I wait with a trap and a bait, but they ain't biting on a single one. I'm waiting on a mouse today. Anyhow, it'll be just fine. I may not be a hero, babe, but I'm willing to give it a try. I'll lay my trap by yours, and you will be my scars, and I won't care at all because I'm there. You are there, so we are there. You are there, and I am there. I'm waiting on a mouse today. Anyhow, it'll be just fine. I may not be a hero.